would give a few more comments on your background, Fazrul, that has some bearing on this session. Fazrul is Senior Deputy Director of the Department of Statistics of Malaysia, and he heads the interim section of the National Accounts Division. And this is the section that's responsible for compiling quarterly and annual GDP of Malaysia. In addition, as we heard earlier also, Fazrul is very active in the steering group for the Regional Economic Statistics Program for Asia and the Pacific. And our presenters this afternoon include Rajeswari Tonjijil, Mohammed Arupin, Abdul Hadi, Ahmad Hadi, Nurai Kara Ibrahim. So welcome to you all, and Fazrul, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. All right. Thank you, Ricky. Assalamualaikum, and a very good afternoon to everybody. I hope everybody has taken their lunch and enjoyed the free lunch given by the ESCAP. Okay, I think Ricky has forgotten one more name that I think that should be noted here. As the discussants of this session, we have Mr. Herman Smith from the UNSD on the national accounts. So I won't be saying that I'm chairing this this session, but this is a co-chair with Herman also. He has more insights on this. Okay, before we move on, there are a few things that some of us are not been aware or not the national accountants. What is basically what we are talking here? On the national account sessions, we will be basically 5 presenters here. We have 5 presenters here, and we are going to hear all of them at one go. After this, then Herman will basically comment on the papers. Then we have the Q&A after the break. Okay, before we move on, the national accounts, or basically what we have here is SNA, System of National Accounts. There are data collection, compilation, estimation methods in national account. There's a basic summary that I have here. One is this data collection methods. The one that you have is administrative data that can be used. Second one is statistical methods that is from your surveys. You can use that in your surveys. And the SNA compilation approaches, there are 3 methods we have. Is the production approach, that is your supply side. Final expenditure approach on your demand side, and the income approach. And the estimations are basically on the balancing item method, commodity flow method, and benchmark ratio method. Benchmark ratio method basically using the I/O. You have the output from your surveys, and it is basically using a constant input that you had only the movers from your output to have the value added. Okay. Before we have, I think we have 1968 SNA, 1963 or 68, 68 I'm not mistaken, 1993 and 2008. But the major revisions, the major changes is from the 1993 to 2008 SNA is the concept of capitalization of R&D. Second is valuation of output for own final use by households and corporations to include capital return. Changes in measuring of pension entitlements, capitalization of expenditure on weapon systems, refinement of the FISIM, measuring the output of non-life insurance services, and treatment of employee stock options. Of course, there is a lot more. Among it is the co-integration with the BPM6. Those are doing balance of payment. Knew that you have to put out the good for processing to be included in the calculations. All that is have to be adhered to have a SNA 2008 compliance. Okay. There are 5 presenters with me. This is the papers that you're going to present. The first one is Quarterly Estimates of GDP in India by T. Rajeswari. reconciling provincial and municipal Grdp using automatic balancing method by Abdul Hadi, if I'm not mistaken. And the development of measuring informal sector for agriculture activities in Malaysia by Muhammad Fahmi, modernization and capital stock statistics by Ahmad Ridwan, and major revision experiences on insurance sector estimations in the national account system of Turkey. Okay, without wasting any more time, Herman, do you have anything to say? No, not yet. Herman has nothing yet to say now. Okay, I call upon the first presenter, Ms. T. Rajeswari. She is the Deputy Director General of National Account Division, Central Statistical Office, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, New Delhi. 19 years of experience on national accounts with the specializations in estimation of quarterly estimates of GDP and compilation sequence of economy. Without further ado, I call upon Ms. Rajeswari.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Before I start, I thank the ESCAP for giving me an opportunity to speak on national accounts this August for audience. Just start.
Yeah, sorry.
This one. This one. Okay. Okay, this is the presentation outline. I will be giving a bit on introduction, then a bit on the country practices. This is mainly with an idea as to give an idea regarding how the different, different estimates of when you compile, as you saw that there are different approaches to compile GDP. So obviously when you compile GDP using different approaches, you have different data sources. So obviously all these approaches would not give you the same result. So there would be differences in the results. So how the countries are dealing with the different GDP that they get, that is the main focus on that. And also briefly on the various sources, methodology that they use. Then data sources and compilation method that we use in compiling the quarterly GDP. Then lastly, challenges, the way forward and conclusions. Actually, the quarterly GDP has, the requirement of compiling quarterly GDP started after we subscribed to the SDDs. With India subscribed to SDDs from 97 onwards. And then quarterly GDP has been released since 1999. Let me tell you, from initially we were releasing only the production side of the quarterly GDP, not the expenditure side. That expenditure side aggregates we started releasing it after 5-6 years after release of the production side. Then these estimates are released as per the advanced release calendar, and the estimates are released 2 months after the end of the quarter. And the revisions, the quarterly GDP are revised along with the revisions in the annual estimates. That means whenever an annual estimate is revised, there will be corresponding revisions in the quarterly estimates also. India compiles quarterly GDP following the production approach and the expenditure approach. And because the source data that are available for production approach is much more firm, the estimate that are compiled using the production approach is treated as a firm estimate of GDP. So obviously the expenditure side GDP and the production side GDP, there is a difference. And this is known as a discrepancy. We are showing it in the expenditure side. Now, normally in the quarterly GDP, normally indicators are used because not much of data is available in form of surveys. And also here, when you measure the quarterly GDP, the most important thing is the growth in the real GDP. So basically, we focus on the volume indicators or the physical indicators that are available to estimate the GDP. So at present, the available indicators are the index of industrial production, which is a volume indicator. Then other indicators such as ton kilometer, passenger and freight kilometers in respect of railways and air transport. Then you have the motor vehicles, sales, etc. Also, normally the indicators that are used are the sales, turnover, receipt information from VAT sources, then employment earnings data for estimating value added in service sector, then trade margins for estimating value added in trade. These are generally the indicators that are used by many countries who are compiling the quarterly GDP. Now when it comes to, then there are other indicators are also used by some country like the housing permits, then housing stock data, then the value added in crop production recorded in a quarter in which the sales occur. Then there are different countries adopt different methods. Then of course, when there are no indicators available, some trend extrapolation is used. Now there is a big question, why trend extrapolation? Why don't you use some econometric methods? The econometric methods, I mean, it's the big issue whether it really gives us the desired, result, because econometric methods normally gives you a trend on the basis of past experience, when past performance of the economy. When there are sudden changes in the economy, there is a feeling that maybe this econometric methods may not be able to capture. Also, if there are only a small portion of the GDP, say around 10 to 15% of the GDP, it's ideal that the recommendation is that you can use some trend extrapolation, which depending on, the sectors that are available, and which you can say that if the performance is comparatively stable. Then the expenditure side, final consumption expenditure of the household. Normally the indicators are used are sales or revenue data. Then commodity flow method is used by most of the countries. Then expenditures reported by household, the expenditure data from surveys. Trend extrapolation is used to limited degree for expenditures which are considered stable over short term, like personal care expenditures, etc. These are generally the methods adopted. Then continuing with the expenditure approach, then there are certain countries use the records of vehicle registered, then death rates to gauge the final expenditure on funeral services, weather data to estimate the consumption of gas and electricity. Then of course the NPIs, that means non-profit institutions serving households, where it's here in the case of final consumption expenditure, generally it is included as a part of the households. And estimates of NPS which are also worked out using the employment or earning data or trend extrapolation. Then final consumption expenditure of the general government. I don't know whether those of you who are not in national accounts, the expenditure components of GDP includes the final consumption expenditure of the households, final consumption expenditure of the general government, then the the gross fixed capital formation, change in stocks, and net exports. So these are the various items that are items of the expenditure side GDP. So I'm just going through the data sources that are normally used for compiling these the estimates. Then as far as gross capital formation is concerned, value or value of capital goods that are produced and purchased. Then surveys on construction activity, housing starts, then commodity flow methods for expenditure on machinery and equipment, vehicle registration records, value or volume of work done for estimating GFCF of construction, like labor inputs, indices of construction output, construction materials. These are normally the methodology that are available in literature for use in the, which are used by different countries in compiling the expenditure approach GDP. Then regarding change in inventories, enterprise surveys covering manufacturing and trading establishments. Then of course this is done after adjustment for eliminating holding gains arising out of price movements. Then stocks of food and strategic materials held by government agencies and fuel stocks held by petroleum companies. Then some countries derive total change in stock as a residual. That means some countries, what they do, they have the production side GDP, and if it is a firm figure, that is treated as a control total of the expenditure side, and they estimate all other components of the expenditure side and derive the change in inventories as a residual. There are some countries doing that. Of course, imports and exports data are normally available from the balance of payments. Now coming to discrepancies, when there are, as I told you earlier, when there are different approaches to compile GDP, the discrepancies would also be there. So normally, like yesterday somebody was mentioning that if how reliable the GDP or the quality assurance discrepancy is the issue, so the difference between the GDP. So this differences between GDP is there in when whosoever are compiling GDP by different approaches. Now how they are adjusting these differences depends upon the data which they feel that is more firm, or which are more firm. So that is treated as the headline GDP. Like in some cases, like I found out that in the ABS Australian Bureau, the headline GDP is treated as the average of 3 independent measures. That means they have 3 independent measures of GDP by production, expenditure and income. The average of 3 is treated as the headline, and the differences between the sum of the income and the expenditure component are shown as explicit discrepancies. This is one way of treating discrepancies. Now it depends on country to country, and the way they are satisfied with whatever data that they have, they decide on which is more firm. When expenditure side is, when only expenditure and income based approach is adopted, and if source data of the expenditure based approach is relatively superior, the statistical discrepancy is shown as the income side component, as in the Bureau of Economic Analysis, US. Now Statistics Canada, they treat it in a different way. They reconcile the estimates by adding 1/2 of the discrepancy to the lower estimate and subtracting the other half from the higher estimate. This is how they do. When production approach is most reliable, discrepancy is included in both the expenditure and income approaches to bring the total of each of these to the agreed estimate, and which is considered as best reflecting the economic development. That is the Office of National Statistics, UK. They do it this way. Now, in case of Singapore, I found out that statistical discrepancy is allotted in the expenditure side and the income-based estimates. Now, these are generally the country practices that are, of course, in case of France, the expenditure side, the changes in inventories, the first thing that I mentioned, how the changes in inventories are arrived at as a residual. So there they arrive the changes in inventories as a residual, so there are no difference between the different GDP estimates. So, but here the issue is that the statistical discrepancy automatically gets, adjusted. So the problem with this method is that we do not know to what extent the discrepancy is, or how good your estimation procedure was. So anyway, this is how they do it. Now coming to in India, how do we compile the GDP? So here we have different data sources, the administrative data for the primary and services sector, indicators like index of industrial production, quarterly accounts of enterprises that list shares in the stock exchange. These are basically business accounts data. So the administrative data are in the form of the government budgets, and then the agriculture production data, which is a product of administration. So these are the data sources that are available. Then in the case of unorganized sector, so basically the administrative sources in that, they give for the organized sector, that means the public sector and the private corporate sector, we get the data from those sources. Now the big issue is the unorganized sector, because we have a large unorganized sector. So for how to deal with it, so what we have is that we have the enterprise surveys which are done once in 5 years. So that forms the benchmark estimates. So the annual estimates are compiled on the basis of these benchmark estimates, and then moving forward with relevant indicators. Now these indicators, the same indicators are also used in the quarterly accounts. So the benchmark indicator are prepared at the detailed activity level for the base year of national account series and using the estimated labor input and the value added per worker. Then for subsequent years, the GVA is estimated by extrapolating using appropriate indicators relevant to the economic activity. The indicators used for quarterly GDP are same as those used in the annual accounts. Now the economic activities in the agriculture are agriculture sector is estimated using area and yield estimates. Construction sector is estimated using the consumption of inputs such as cement and steel. That means we are using the commodity flow method. So then GVA in unorganized retail trade is estimated using the sales tax collection figures. In the unorganized manufacturing, assessments are made on the basis of IIP data in the appropriate segment representing the unorganized activity and which is later replaced by the annual survey of industries data. Though these methods, they are not directly based on the survey of unorganized sector, but they have indirect linkages to the sector they represent. Then as far as data sources and methods used for GDP expenditure is concerned, we use the general government accounts. Then we have the trade data for the exports and imports, quarterly accounts of enterprises and indicators like index of industrial production. Then data available by broad categories such as revenue expenditure, capital expenditure. Then gross fixed capital formation is basically estimated by two different type of assets, that is construction and machinery. So the machinery part is estimated by using the index of industrial production of capital goods. And the construction part is the estimated construction output is used for extrapolating the GFCF of construction. Then what are the various challenges? Now the various challenges that are is in the form of the appropriate price deflators. So as of now we have only the wholesale price index and the consumer price index, which are used for deflating the various current price estimates. Actually, ideally one should use the producer's price index. So, but of course now we are bringing out a wholesale price index which is devoid of these product taxes. So that will be much more closer to the producer price index, which we'll be using very shortly now. And also absence of detailed price data on various inputs. So there are some people arguing that one should use double deflation, one should use single deflation and things like that. But for using double deflation, we need specific price indices for output and input. So the input price index, there is a problem in, there's no, availability of price data for detail-wise inputs is not there. So that is also one issue. Then, and of course, we do not have the annual enterprise surveys or the quarterly surveys. And then we do not have the quarterly retail trade surveys, which some countries do have. So these are the challenges. So the way forward, we would be bringing out the WPI adjusted for product taxes, so which will be close to producers price index, which we'll be using in future compilations. Then of course there is a periodic labor force survey that is going to be launched very shortly. So once the results of this, maybe we will be able to use the number of hours worked and other labor input on a quarterly basis. Then of course for the government final consumption expenditure, we need the detailed quarterly expenditures and receipts of the government, general government, which at present is not available because we have currently what we have is the broad details of expenditure and receipts. So now we are in touch with our agencies, the government agencies to get detailed information. So they are working on it. So as and when we receive our GFCV estimates will be much more, will improve. Then of course, to tackle the discrepancy, we are planning to use the supply use framework to so that once we balance it in a particular year, so we can use it, so then there will be no discrepancy. So probably we'll be using it in future. When, of course, now we have supply use table for, now we have up to 12, 13, 14. So as and when we compile more of those tables and we see how stable the relationships are, then we will use them to balance our GDP. So concluding, the indicators are available for compiling around 89% of GDP. For the remaining part, extrapolation techniques are adopted, which are based on the statistical and economic factors of these features of the indicators. Then data and supply use system will be exploited to improve the quarterly GDP estimates. This will be done when the compilation of principal matrices of SUT system is made an annual exercise. Then, of course, when you are releasing the short-term indicators like GDP, there need to be a transparent publication and revision policy which is there. Then also, whenever some changes are there, we have to inform the users as to what changes are there, and even in a press release, we give a brief detail of the performance of the indicators, if they, and relating it to the GDP, so that the user can easily relate the GDP growth to the indicator growth, or else they will, so that not much of questions are raised. Then, of course, we have regular interaction with source agencies for improving the timeliness and quality of indicators. Then release dates are published through an advanced release calendar. In the press releases, the reasons for revisions are also documented and inform the users of the indicators used for compiling the GDP. Then we also have a regular press briefings and data users conferences for specific audiences such as specialized journalists. Because what happens is those economic journalists who write about it, they also have to be educated on the GDP data, because most of them, they just write on the basis of various information that is available on the website. So there is a need to educate them as to how each, supposing you are giving a manufacturing growth of say 10%. So how is it this 10% arrived? So you have to explain to them, see, this is the indicator, these are the indicators are used, and this is how the growth rates are. So this is a very important mechanism, because if they are not educated, then they will write, we don't know what they'll write, it's all nonsense. So you should better educate the economic journalists also to understand the national accounts data. So ensure that we ensure that the QGDP data are always consistent with the annual GDP estimates. This enables us to provide a reliable measure to understand a wide range of economic transactions and developments. And thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rajaswari. Basically, she was explaining to us the process of compilation of the quarterly GDP using short-term movers that they have and available at that point of time. It is a daunting task, able to give an overall view of that country in terms of the GDP, the growth, and all the indicators to be aligned. I think it's a daunting task, and that is what she's trying to say in the paper today. Okay, thank you, Ms. Rajaswari. And the second paper will be from Mr. Abdul Hadi Asfaranga. He is the BPS statistic from the BPS Statistic Indonesia in the compilation of the rest of the world accounts under the Expenditure Accounts Department. Okay, without that, I kindly, Mr. Abdul Hadi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would thank to the ESCAP for giving us opportunity to attend this conference. I would like to present my paper on reconciling provincial and municipal Drdp in Indonesia using automatic balancing method. In line with global tendency for a well-informed world, the openness of information has become a basic requirement. Official statistics, as one of information sources, play a significant role in bringing up public awareness on vital information. Consequently, public demand for better statistical data in terms of variety and quality is getting higher. BPS Statistic Indonesia as National Statistic Office of Indonesia has been producing many socioeconomic indicators, but in national and regional level. In regional level, some of them are population statistics, poverty statistics, human development index, and gross regional domestic product or GRDP. Among the socioeconomic indicators, GRDP can suitably represent the achievement of regional development. Indonesia has released annual provincial GRDP by production and by expenditure since 1983, while the quarterly provincial GRDP by expenditure and by production since 2005. Indonesia also has released annual municipal GRDP by production since 1993. And this year, Indonesia planned to release annual municipal GRDP by expenditure. One big issue faced by compilers in reviewing GRDP series is the size of statistical discrepancy, either between GRDP by industry and GRDP by expenditure, or between provincial GRDP and municipal GRDP. A big proportion of statistical discrepancy can potentially deteriorate the meaning of a set of GRDP. To come to a GRDP with good quality, especially for current aspect, a proper reconciliation cannot be avoided. The reconciliation must oblige some important properties such as closeness to initial figures and the generated figures such as growth of GRDP that are properly safeguarded. Considering that reconciliation method plays an important part in the development of regional account, which brings urgency for a regular improvement of reconciliation method. In order to reconcile GRDP efficiently, automatic balancing is proposed to eliminate remaining statistical discrepancy between provincial GRDP and total municipal GRDP. GRDP by expenditure is the focus of this paper. Moreover, this method is also universally implementable. It means that most statistics compilation which requires reconciliation process are able to apply this method to come to a legitimate, transparent, efficient, and feasible reconciliation. For the definition, GRDP is final goods and services produced in the economic territory of a region during a given period. In expenditure approach, GRDP is defined as purchases of the final goods and services produced in a given period. And for the reconciliation is process of adjusting data derived from two different sources to remove or at least reduce the impact of statistical discrepancies identified in the process of data confrontation. An automatic balancing is mathematical reconciliation process which applies optimization method to remove the statistical discrepancy and maintain the growth rate of reconciled data. And we move to reconciliation procedures. Compilation of annual GRDP in provincial or municipal level is initiated by a precondition that concept, coverage, data source, and estimation method is standardized. If the precondition is positively confirmed, the steps could be done in a consecutive manner. The first step is compiling initial figures at current price, which is independently conducted by provincial and municipal compiler. And the second step is editing provincial and municipal figures in terms of correcting wrongly imputed numbers and formulas, and allocating provincial figures into municipal figures based on related indicators and information. The objective of the second step is to minimize the gap between provincial and total municipal GRDP. And the third step is reconciling data using automatic balancing. to obtain zero or minimum statistical discrepancy. Those steps of reconciliation are performed with several considerations. The first, provincial figures is regarded to be the reference data because in terms of quality, data available at provincial level is supposed to be better than municipal. And the second is, provincial and municipal compilers have good comprehension on the regional economy. Therefore, involving them in resolving statistical discrepancy is necessary, especially at initial phase of reconciliation. And the last consideration is total components of GRDP by expenditure is set equal to the total categories of GRDP by production, where net export among provinces or municipalities are considered to be balancing item. Based on IMF manual, it is recommended that reconciliation is carried out at the most detailed classification whenever possible. In this case, there are 11 subcomponents to reconcile, which comprises 7 subcomponents of household consumption expenditure, 1 component of NP's consumption expenditure, 1 component of government consumption expenditure, 2 subcomponents of gross fixed capital formation. Changes in inventories, export and imports of municipalities are not reconciled. And then the reconciliation method covers data input, automatic balancing, and result assessment. In data input, we prepare 2 types of data, initial data and benchmark data. Initial data is municipal data, municipal GRDP by expenditure, and the benchmark data is provincial GRDP by expenditure. The municipality with index I and component with index G and year with index T. We reconcile 2 provinces. They are West Sumatra with 19 municipalities and Central Java with 35 municipalities. And you can see on the slide that there is virtual year in the 7th year of the data. You know, in compiling your quarterly GDP, the total of 4 quarters is benchmarked by annual GRDP. But in this case, it doesn't make sense to bind the total of 6 years. So there is virtual year to incorporate our necessity in reconciliation. Reconciliation is performed to change initial data to attain 2 objectives. The first, total of municipal GRDP is equal to provincial GRDP, or it means zero statistical discrepancy. And the second, growth rates are still maintained. So we use automatic balancing to achieve these objectives. The automatic balancing, we use automatic balancing method by applying model explained by Difonso and Maridi with some modification of us to incorporate our needs. You can see there are 5 methods of automatic balancing: additive first difference, or AFD, additive second difference, or ASD, proportional first difference, of PFD, proportional second difference, or PSD, relative squared distance, or RSD. You can see that additive is minimize the difference of benchmark and initial data. Proportional minimize the ratio of benchmark and initial data, while RSD minimize the relative square distance of benchmark and initial data. Based on an objective function, we can derive O metrics. On the right side, O metric is like variance and covariance metrics. I is identity matrix, Y is initial data, and D is difference matrix. Besides those automatic balancing method, we also use pro rata by multiplying share of municipal data with provincial data. Pro rata use Microsoft Excel, while automatic balancing we employ self-developed software named Reconciliation PDRB. It uses R language that can incorporate huge speed. It can incorporate high-speed reconciliation of huge data, and it is user-friendly. To assess the performance of each method, we conduct a set of tests. There are 3 indicators. The first is ratio of reconciled data to initial data. The further ratio deviates from 100, the worst performance of reconciled data. And the second is number of sign changes in growth rates. And the third is growth rate difference of reconciled and initial data. The bigger value of growth rate difference, the worse reconciled data performs. In order to summarize the result, mean as central tendency and standard deviation as dispersion measure are used. By running Reconciliation PDRB on computer with a 3.2 gigahertz of processor and 2 gigabyte of RAM, it spans elapsed time less than 20 seconds. And the first province will be analyzed is West Sumatra. Prior to balancing process, statistical discrepancy from minus 0.37 to 0.53. Those figures are relatively small and only occurred in 2014 and 2015. NP's consumption expenditure actually does not need to be included in balancing process because its discrepancy in all years are 0. But to make fair treatment on all components, NP's consumption expenditure will still be reconciled. We could assess the performance of each method by watching the mean and standard deviation of ratio of initial to reconcile Drdp. We could see that all methods effectively eliminate statistical discrepancy and has relative small change, which can be identified by mean of ratio being close to 100%. NP doesn't change at all. We can see that 100%. It proves that reconciliation process work correctly because when discrepancy is 0, it doesn't change at all. And from the standard deviation, all methods are below 0.5%. AFD and SD have higher standard deviation, while BFD and RSD have the lowest standard deviation. For the number of sign changes in growth rates, all methods have no observation that has opposite sign in growth. Those perfect results are caused by small statistical discrepancy in each component and year. While for the mean growth rate difference, we can see that mean growth rate are relatively small, where all methods score below 0.5%. AFD and ASD have the largest mean growth rate difference, while PFD and RSD have the lowest mean. For the standard deviation, PFD, PSD, RSD have more homogeneous growth rate difference. And the second province is Central Java. The Central Java statistical discrepancy is quite obvious during the data period. It varies from minus 2% to 1.95%, which is wider than West Sumatra. This condition is more challenging because bigger statistical discrepancy means biggest portion to be distributed to every observation. For the ratio of initial to reconcile Drdp, ratio figures between reconcile and initial data of Central Java are wider than West Sumatra due to larger statistical discrepancy. PFD, PSD, and RSD have mean of ratio closer to 100 than the other method. For the standard deviation, in overall, the result of RSD method are the most homogeneous method compared to the result of other methods. For number of sign changes in growth of Central Java's Drdp, the significant statistical discrepancy causes increasing number of observations that has opposite sign in growth rates. AFD and ASD own 20 cases, while RSD has outstanding performance with 15 cases, following by PFD with 16 cases. For the mean growth rate difference, Table 9 shows PFD, PSD, and RSD have the smallest growth rates difference on average. It is below 1% in each component. In the meantime, pro rata AFD, ASD perform inferior growth rate difference. For the standard deviation, along the observation period, PFD, PSD, and RSD always have standard deviation under 1%. However, pro rata has smaller standard deviation in some components. This is the result summary for the West Sumatra and Central Java. You could see that PFD and RSD have highest rank more frequently, broadly speaking. So based on the result before, we can conclude some points. The first is the smaller statistical discrepancies of initial data, the better result of balancing method. And the second, proportional methods PFD and PSD are better than additive ones, AFD and ASD. And the third, first difference method, AFD and PFD methods are better than second difference methods, ASD and PSD. Pro rata, as the conventional method, doesn't maintain the growth rate. And the last, in general, relative square distance method, or RSD method, performs best expressed by most frequent in rank 1. However, the most stable method is proportional first difference, or PFD. The challenging issue is automatic balancing could solve the statistical discrepancy problem effectively, but we keep developing the current reconciliation method to obtain more outstanding performance and a comprehensive method. And thank you for the attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hadi. We have looked on the both sides of the estimations we made, rather in the production or the expenditure side. But both have talked about how they do it and what is the degree of automatic, and Indonesia's paper is showing at the further down. Basically, when we produce the GDP, you produce at the state level, and then national level, the state level, they have gone down further down into the municipal level. This is something that is very quite difficult due to the availability of the data itself at the municipal level. But it is something that we can ask after this, after the Q&A session, and then we will move on to the niche market in the SNA, or the smaller issues that in the SNA, in the compilation, there are the issues. Let me bring Mr. Fahmi. He is the officers involved in compilation in the services sector, basically on the real estates, but this is one of the things that he has to look upon and write about it. So without wasting more time, I'm asking Fahmi to present the paper.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you to Mr. Fazrul for the introduction. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank you to ESCAP for this opportunity. And my topic is about the development of measuring informal sector for agriculture activity in Malaysia. So my presentation online, first I will briefly intro about the informal sector in Malaysia, and then the background of agriculture sector in Malaysia, and then the measurement of value added of informal sector in agriculture, which consists of data sources and methodology that have been used, and then the finding, then the challenges and way forward. Firstly, for the introduction, from the 15 ICLS, there was nothing against the inclusion if they meet the criteria of the definition. So from the conceptual point of view, agriculture and related activity should be included in the scope of the informal sector if they are carried out by household and incorporated enterprises and if they meet the criteria of the informal sector definition. However, for the practical data collection purpose, 15 ICLS also suggested the exclusion of agriculture and related activity from the scope of informal sector survey and to measure them separately. So for the informal sector survey in Malaysia, it was conducted officially in 2010 after some pilot tests before that, where the questionnaire was attached to the label for survey as a submodule. And the criteria of the informal sector in Malaysia was the enterprises is not registered with the Company Commission of Malaysia or any other professional bodies. At least one goods or services produced are meant for sale or barter transaction. The size in terms of employment is less than 10%. And the coverage of informal sector survey in Malaysia is for the non-agriculture activity. So the background of agriculture sector in Malaysia. So the contribution of agriculture to GDP declining from nearly 20% in the early 90s to below 10% in 2050. But in terms of small and medium enterprises, SME in agriculture still contribute significant to gross value added of agriculture with a share almost 49% in 2014. In general, agriculture structure in Malaysia is divided to two categories, which first is agro-food subsector and industrial commodity subsector. For agro-food subsector consists of food crop, livestock, fishing industry, which often associated with smallholding managed by individual farmer. While industrial commodity subsector, which consists of oil palm, rubber, and forestry and logging, which are frequently associated with large estate managed by corporation. So the development of this subsector was guided by the National Agro-Food Policy and National Commodity Policy, which aim to increase food production and export of industrial commodity. So the informal sector in agriculture is more prevalent in agro-food subsector than industrial commodity, except to rubber subsector where smallholder are predominant. Therefore, effort to measure the contribution of informal sector in agriculture is necessary to give the knowledge and to garner policymaker attention to reinforce this sector. For the measurement of value added, there are three main data sources that have been used. First, economic census, labor force survey, and household income survey. For the economic census, it was carried out once every 5 years and provide comprehensive information on registered economy establishment. For this study, we used the economic census for year 2010. And the main information that have been used are output, intermediate consumption, number of employees by the category of establishment, which is micro, small, medium, and large company. Meanwhile, for the labor force survey, it was available every year and provide information about the characteristic of labor force, the structure of employment, and status in employment like employer, employee, on-account workers, and unpaid family workers. For the household income survey, it was conducted twice in 5 years. And the main data that has been used is income from self-employment. In terms of methodology, there are two methods that have been used. First, labor input method, and the second one is mixed income concept. For the labor input method, there are 3 steps involved for the estimation. First, to estimate of labor input in the informal sector, which is from household survey. And there are, as mentioned in the manual of measuring informality, on-account workers and contributing family workers can be assumed to belong to the informal sector. So based on this assumption, on-account workers and unpaid family workers gathered from labor force survey will be used as the proxy of the number of employees in informal sector for agriculture. And the second step is to estimate of output and value added per labor. Since there are no surveys that cover the informal sector in agriculture, the assumption that labor productivity for informal sector is equivalent as the labor productivity in formal sector with some criteria. So the criteria is the establishment must be from micro or small company with the number of employees less than 10%. So the labor productivity are deriving from the economic census data for the selected establishment that meet the criteria. And then the final step is multiplying the labor input and the output per labor. So the number of self-employed person from labor force survey will be multiplied with the labor productivity for each activity. And then the intermediate consumption is estimated by using ratio of intermediate consumption and output for the formal sector, that the same establishment that deriving labor productivity. So the value added by industry is obtained by difference between output and intermediate consumption. So for the mixed income concept, basically mixed income refers to the income generated by unincorporated enterprises owned by members of the household. Therefore, mixed income concept derived from agriculture activity is closely reflected to portray the contribution of informal sector in agriculture. To derive mixed income for agriculture activity, data from household income survey have been used. So household income survey provide information on income from self-employment. So the income from self-employment consists of income from agriculture activity, non-agriculture activity, and on consumption. So the structure of income from agriculture activity will be utilized to represent mixed income for agriculture sector. So this is the finding for the 2010, which is every data that have available. So for the labor input method, from the labor force surveys, there are 944.7 thousand labor for on account and unpaid family workers. And from the economic census data, for establishment with less than 10 employees, value added per labor is 20,833 Malaysian ringgit. So the estimate to the gross value added in informal sector by multiplying this both information, it's around 90.7 billion. And the contribution of informal sector to gross value added in 2010 by using the labor input method is 23.7%. 6%. And for the mixed income concept, the contribution of informal sector to gross value added is 21.9%. Most of the key indicator data that has been used in this estimation, such as labor productivity and income from self-employment component, which have been used to derive structure of mixed income, can only be obtained once census or survey are conducted. Therefore, any data update for subsequent years are highly dependent on the availability of new census or survey. So, a dedicated informal sector survey for agriculture is also recommended to determine the real magnitude and performance of informal sector in agriculture. So that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Fahmi, for your brief explanation on the measuring of the informal sectors of agriculture. Though we know the agriculture informal sector exists in all services, there are in the manufacturing, there are some, but this is where, though the share is small in Malaysia, but they are still looking at it if there exists any informal sectors for that in agriculture itself. Okay, we will move on to Ahmad Ridwan for his paper on the modernization in capital stocks. Let him have the floor, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fazrul. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to all. So I would like to thank ESCAP for this opportunity to share our experience and our efforts in modernizing the capital stock compilation. So this is my presentation outline. So I will start with a brief introduction, and then we will go to the capital stock statistic compilation in Malaysia, the concept we use, the modernization effort we take, and then the challenges, and at the end of the presentation is the conclusion. So, capital stock statistics in Malaysia was compiled with the collaboration between Department of Statistics and Economic Planning Unit with the technical consultation or technical assistance from the ABS, from the Upper Australia Bureau of Statistics. So the compilation was compiled based on OECD Manual 2009, Measuring Capital, and Framework of SNA 2008. Basically, the capital stock statistics provides information of an accumulated fixed asset, and is also the measure of wealth of the country at a particular point in time in terms of the assets. And these statistics are important to enable economists to estimate and predict the economic growth and the potential output of the economy. So this is the capital stock statistic in timeline in Malaysia. So we start, we received a request from the Economic Planning Unit in 2002 to provide these statistics. Since then, DOSM started the initial studies on all the requirements to establish the compilation. So working visits has been arranged to Australian Bureau of Statistics in 2002 and to Badan Pusat Statistik Indonesia in 2005 to get the knowledge and experience from other countries in this compilation. In 2008, DOS received the technical consultation or technical assistance from the ABS specifically to provide the comprehensive framework for the development, the capital stock compilation in Malaysia. So as you can see, the first publication that we produced to public is in 2011, which means nearly 10 years of studying. So in 2012, we published the base year 2005. And for 2015, we published for the base year 2010. The latest release is just last year, end of last year, the capital stock 2013-2015. So basically, the capital stock compilation is using the perpetual inventory method. So the PIM itself is an economic model that generates and estimates of capital stock by accumulating past purchases over assets over their estimated service life. There are two approaches in applying the PIM. That is the traditional PIM and the integrated approach. So the integrated approach has the advantage that all stocks and flow data are consistent. So we are following the ABS practice. They are using the integrated approach, and for the world, I think US, BLS, and ABS is the pioneer in this approach. So basically, this is the brief capital stock business process in Malaysia. So the production process starts with the extraction of data from several sources, including economic census of surveys, databases, as well as company account to calculate the gross fixed capital formation, or GFCF. Then the process of balancing the GFCF by type of asset and industry will be done, and we will align to the requirement of the PIM input. At this stage also, we will compile the asset price indices. So all the inputs will be used to calculate the capital stock, and then the generated capital stock are consolidated and tabulated accordingly to the requirements of analysis and publication. So basically, this slide we will focus on the process 4, which means the generating process of capital stock, which start with the calculation for a single asset for each industry that we have in Malaysia. So the results of the calculation for all types of asset in each industry will be aggregated into 24 main groups of Malaysia. Currently, we are published it at 15 groups, and any changes will require repeating the generating process of all the related worksheet in sequence, meaning we are using the bottom-up approach. And then if there is no modification or no improvement or no modernization in our compilation process with the worksheet shown at the bottom of the diagrams, it shows that for every base year, it will increase the numbers of worksheets used to calculate the detailed level of capital stock. So with the base 2000, we nearly used 1,500 worksheet, and then for the base 2005, 4,000 worksheet, and increased to 6,000 worksheet in base 2010. And with this increment, we will need to upgrade our PC, upgrade our computers to cater the calculation based on using worksheet compilation. So with that, we do some modernization in the capital stock. We do worksheet improvement. So this is the differences between the base year. And normally, we are practicing that during the rebasing activity, we will implement the latest recommendation, the latest concept, or the latest methodology that recommended by the SNA. So it is in order to maintain or not to distort the current producing capital stocks statistic. So with this comparison, you can see that for 2005, with the increased numbers of worksheet to handle, we have to use Microsoft Access as the database to compile all the worksheets generated data at the asset level for each industry. So for the base year 2010, we try to use Microsoft Excel with VBA programming, so that it will just looping through the each industry or each asset to generate all the data, and then they will append it into one table. So it can reduce the time and reduce mostly the time to consolidate and to generate data. However, the improvement made are limited to the data generation and consolidation process only. So DOSM still need to perform all the subsequent processes manually. Therefore, we need a system that can accommodate all the processes and all the production process until the publication stage. So with that, we come to develop our MyCap stock system. So the development, we adopting the agile system development lifecycle, so that this development will focus on continual changing and refining based on user requirement before any finalizing the system development at every stages. So we will test and we will develop and we will test. So this agile system development will really needs the commitment from user as well as the developer. So the objective is simple, just to simplify the modernization, to simplify and modernize the manual compilation process. So this is the proposed architecture diagram of the MyCap stock system. And this system also will act as a repository of knowledge on capital stock statistic framework. So the system is capable to generate capital statistic from the base year 2000 until the base year 2010, and it is able to accommodate the extension or addition of base year. So it is also capable to do ad hoc analysis and analytic by using existing dataset or external dataset concurrently. So the system, for your information, the system has been completed at the end of 2006, and this year DOS will have the opportunity to produce the capital statistic by using the system for the first time. And this is the flow of the system. So the flow of the system that we prepare the input data in Microsoft Excel input template that we have prepared in the specific folder. So the ETL or extract, transform, and load process will take place and initiate the process of calculating the PIM. And then all the process will be going to run data evaluation, data analysis, data analytic, data relation, and data visualization at the same time. So all the generated statistics will be displayed on the dashboard for computers or mobile. So this is the expansion of Bangkok system. So if you look at the right side, is starting from the PIM engine, it is the currently completed system, and the data preparation or extraction balancing to the input is the second phase. So normally during the rebasing activity, the GFCF, the asset price, will be updated and harmonized accordingly to the new base year requirement. So the preparation of the time series GFCF manually are tedious, and it will require various techniques. Therefore, that's why we are doing it after we completed the first phase. So basically, the second phase of this system are actually, the second phase output actually produce first phase input. So these are the challenges we are facing in maintaining the challenges before the system. So the challenges before the system, that the manual process use Microsoft Excel with advanced level of knowledge to facilitate the compilation as well as maintaining the worksheet. All the calculations are carried out using a complex formula just because to simplify the process and to ensure the accuracy of the data. So basically, knowledge in databases is also crucial to any system development planning. So with these challenges, the members of the capital stock unit have to prepare themselves with the knowledge of the software, and in addition, the knowledge of the concept and methodology used in capital stock statistics. So the second challenge is to harmonize all the codes and classification. So capital stock statistics requires time series data, so that it is the time series data we have a time series of economic census or survey databases that use different version of classification. So it is also a challenge to us. And the critical success factor, first of all, is commitment. So the commitment come from the leadership, also come from the management. So as DOSM is very fortunate that our management has always supported the ideas of modernizing the production process of all official statistics. And then the second success factor is the capacity building. So DOSM has initiated strategies by sending selected members to attend multiple courses in any related software to develop in-house expertise in maintaining the production process of official statistics. So it is also, we also do or conduct a knowledge sharing session on selected topic on regular basis among the members. With the experienced members, we share their knowledge through lecture, workshops, or hands-on. And lastly, for conclusion, the modernization of statistical production and services is required to stay relevant. So regularly review the business process which can be modernized to improve the efficiency and ability in produce the official statistics. And of course, the system will enhance the delivery in the statistical services. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad Ridwan. As been said in your presentation, you don't have to start big, but you can start small, then further develop for your own needs. This is simple how we managed, he managed to do that. He was starting with an Excel worksheet, and it started out a simple Excel worksheet. Then if we move on to a bigger system, and then when the needs has been really defined, and you know what you really need rather than the ambiguous of what the end product will actually escalate the cost. Then if you know the needs, then further ahead do the system. Okay, and our last presenters is from the Turkey, Ms. Nure. She is the expert on the national accounts and I think on the measurement of the insurance sector, general government, and debt statistics. I now give the floor to her. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to thank the ESCAP for this opportunity. In this presentation, I try to share our experiences on insurance sector estimation. Firstly, I will mention international standards of the insurance sector estimations on output, adjusted claim incurred, and intermediate consumption details. And then characteristics of insurance sector in Turkey and our data sources and calculation processes and the results is summarized. And lastly, I want to share our challenges and conclusions. As known, international standards of the national accounts were updating with the publishment of the new SNA and ESA. And that update provides detailed explanation on insurance sectors and new methods for measurement and new definition such as adjusted claim. So all these changing and improvements have caused the insurance figure to be reanalyzed and revised. This revision was not easy process for us because insurance sector in national accounts covers various activities such as direct insurance, reinsurance, and pension fundings, and also direct insurance subdivides into two classes as life and non-life insurance. SNA has different measurement details for all these subgroups and subclasses. Output formulas by type of insurance is shown in the slide. And in the main revisions, these formulas were used. According to the formulas, total premiums earned plus premium supplements, less benefits due and less increases plus decreases technical reserves gives us the life insurance output. Non-life insurance output is calculated by using total premiums earned plus implicit premium supplements less adjusted claims incurred. Thirdly, reinsurance is calculated in similar way with the non-life insurance. Only commissions payable and profit sharing is omitting the and lastly, for pension companies, the sum of cost methods were used. For non-life insurance and reinsurance output, we have calculated for the first time adjusted claims incurred figure. This is a new concept and using for avoiding volatile and negative estimates for output. Geometrically weighted moving average technique used for the calculation, and for this I have been benefited from the financial productions, flows and stocks in the system of national accounts manual prepared by the UN and ECB. I think detailed numerical examples are really useful for the compilers. Actual and the adjusted claims incurred figures is shown in the table. As intended, this adjustment made the actual claims smoother. And these adjustments effects were realized between minus 13 of 3 and 5% of the actual claims. In here, intermediate consumptions items are shown. Operating expenses, reinsurance shares, FUSM, investment expenses, and pension technical expenses are the main inputs of the sector derived our data. In this slide, we can see some data belongs to the Turkish insurance sector. When we look at the last column that shows the premium and contributions earned share in total, we can say that non-life insurance companies have the highest share with the 72% premiums. Secondly, pension companies and foundations and trusts engaged in the pensions activity have 21% contributions. One reinsurance company's share is around 5%, and lastly, life insurance company have the one of 9% and the smallest share it has. All data sources of the sector are based on the administrative records and detailed financial statements of the companies are given from Undersecretariat of the Treasury, that is the regulator of the sector, agricultural and the catastrophe insurance pools, companies, Turkish Insurance Union, and the General Directorate of the Foundations. And how we can use the data in the calculations process. Components of the output, intermediate consumptions, and the other transactions in the SNA branch based have a match with the accounting codes of the financial statements. Using this SNA and ESA code, we reach all transactions. During the main revision, coverage of the insurance sector is also expanded. Data for agricultural and the catastrophe insurance pools and the foundations and chests they are engaged in pension activities have been included in for the first time, and this expansion is increased the main transaction as seen in the table. Revised annual and the business statistics output figures of the sectors are shown. Annual figures is calculated by the old methods, and revised outputs are significantly different from the old annual figures due to the changing in methodology, data detail, and the coverage. But revised and business statistics figure are converging. For intermediate consumption, there is similar situation like output as well. But when we look at the value-added figures, we can see that three figures are closer as level, and revised value-addeds are more smooth with the effect of the adjusted claim. What are the challenges we have faced? First is the technical details of the financial statements of the insurance sector. Really, it is very difficult to explain and coding other than the other sector, and we need we need more technical support, knowledge at the time. Second challenge is the hybrid companies. They are operate in more than one insurance branches at the same time, but their accounting records are not separated, and so we cannot measure the sector accurately. This causes difficulty for especially the balancing process. And last one is the data availability. New SNA methods requires very detailed data, but before 2009 we have not, and sector data has not been revised for them. And our conclusions, transition to SNA and ESA have resulted in extensive revisions. During the main revision in National Account System of Turkey and for insurance sector, a new methodology and then more advanced data infrastructure and scope have been used. Historical estimation of the historical data is one of our challenge and priority now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Nuri. As I mentioned earlier, the SNA 2008 recommends on the recommendation of the refined methods for calculating FISIMs and measuring the output of non-life insurance services in case of catastrophic losses. That is one among the recommendations by the SNA 2008. Anyway, now we have completed all the presentation from 5 speakers, and I give this chance to Mr. Herman to have his views on the papers presented. I give the floor to Herman, please.
Okay, thank you, Vasu. I must say that I'm glad that I'm here to hear firsthand some of the practical issues that I mean, we always see either in these types of meetings that we have the methodological or the conceptual issues of the SNA being presented, and in this particular case we had 5 very practical implementation issues of the SNA, and I would like to congratulate our presenters here and the fellow authors of these papers. It gives us a good flavor of the challenges that we face as national accountants in compiling our numbers, and I'm really looking forward to further discussions after the break.
Okay, thank you, Herman. What he has said, now I think we can go for a break. We can have a break now, and now we are at 3:35. We'll be back at 4:05 for the Q&A questions and to the floor to ask the presenters. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, we will only break for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Thank you. We should be back here at 3:50. My math is correct? Yeah.
Okay, welcome back. We're going to have the session. We're going to continue the sessions on the Q&A. I think this is the session that most of our presenters is having a butterflies in their stomach right now, whether they can answer the question properly or not, but let make it as easy as possible to give them space to answer the questions. We have 5 presentations, 2 basically on the compilations, the quarterly and the municipality on the demand and the supply side. We have the 3 papers on the niche of the measuring of the informal sectors, modernization and capital stocks, and we have the insurance due to the implementation of the SNA 2008 recommendations. Okay, I think, Herman, do you have anything? Questions?
Thank you, Vasu. What I propose we do is that I have a set of questions for each of the presenters that they can respond to that, and then we get some also responses from the floor. So for the quarterly estimates of the GDP of India, I mean, there's, I would like you to tell us a bit about this revision schedule between the quarterly and the annual GDP and how you benchmark the quarterly numbers with the annual values, and refer also to this, if you do seasonal adjustments in the data, and you refer to the informal sector that you measure that at benchmarks. How do you deal with it in between years? Do you compile capital stock numbers? And how do you deal with work in progress for crop production? How you derive your IIP, and is it not a more appropriate indicator than corporate profits? And in the case of insurance, you refer to net premiums. And I was wondering if that was a short reference, shorthand reference to the calculation of insurance, and otherwise, why don't you use the SNA 2008 SNA recommendation? And I'm also interested to know about the reconciliation of the imports-export data with the balance of payments, and I mean, we later talk about the capital stock measurements, but do you have capital formation data by asset and by industry? And in the case of inventories, if you also do inventory revaluation adjustments.
Yeah. First, regarding the benchmarking of the annual value. How do we do is that whenever we compile an annual, a quarterly number, a corresponding annual is also compiled. That means if we are compiling the Q1 GVA, we also have along with it, we compile for the other 2 quarters, we do some forecast and have an annual figure also. Similarly, when we do the Q2 GVA, the value GDP, we have an annual. So every time we do a quarter, we have an annual. So that would mean by the end of the year, when we do a 4th quarter estimate, all the 4 quarter estimates are aligned to the annual. So that is how we do it. So this quarter, that is now when in the The fourth quarter estimate, the annual estimate is also released along with the fourth quarter estimate. That means all the 4 quarters are aligned with the annual. Now next year when this annual undergoes a change, all the 4 quarter estimates also undergo a change. So that means they are all always aligned to the annual estimate. Now regarding seasonal adjustment, we are not releasing any seasonally adjusted data. Then as far as the informal sector or the unorganized sector, what we do is that our annual estimates are based on, even the informal sector annual estimates are based on the benchmark estimates derived from the surveys. So these benchmark estimates are derived as labor input multiplied by value added per worker. So this estimate forms the benchmark estimate, and it is moved forward on the basis of indicators which are directly related to the sector concerned. Like in the case of, even the quarterly also similar approach is adopted, because we benchmark it to the annual. So similarly, when we compile the first quarter estimate, an annual is constructed. While constructing this annual, we follow the same procedure which we follow for the other annual, and that indicator for that specific quarter growth is taken into account for that quarter. So this is how we take into account of the informal sector in our quarterly estimates. Now as far as capital stock and consumption of fixed capital data is concerned, we compile this data on the basis of the capital stock is not compiled on a quarterly basis. It is done on an annual basis. Consumption of fixed capital is also not done on a quarterly basis. So we do not have a net value added for quarterly. We release only the GDP and the by production and expenditure. Only for the annual estimates we have the capital stock and the consumption of fixed capital. Then regarding the work in progress estimate for crop production, actually our crop estimates production data is based on the harvest based approach. That means we have a crop calendar which is state wise. That means for every state there is a different crop calendar. I mean, the national crop calendar is based on the crops that are produced by different states. So this as per this crop calendar, we follow this harvesting pattern. Like so our production is on the basis of harvest based approach. Whatever is harvested, and that is taken into account. So it's a harvest based approach. Then how is the index of industrial production derived? I think my colleague Mr. Rajesh Kumar will be able to tell you about the complete methodology of the compilation of index of industrial production. But let me focus on the other part. Why would not that be more appropriate indicator than corporate profits? It's not profits for estimating value added. What we do is that even for our regular annual estimate, now we are not using the entire index of industrial production for the entire organized sector, even for the annual estimates of regular annual estimates. What we are doing is that we are following the institutional approach, by which for the public sector we are deriving the manufacturing value added by analyzing the public sector accounts, and for the corporate sector we are having data of about 5 lakh companies. So we analyze this profit and loss account of these companies to derive the value added for manufacturing. And then, IIP is used only for the unorganized sector. And this unorganized sector of the manufacturing comprises of around 20 to 23% of the total value added of manufacturing. So if we use IIP for the entire sector in our quarterly estimates, it will not match up to our annual estimate. Later on, there will be a major revision which we'll have to undertake if we don't follow the same data source. So that is why for the quarterly estimates also we use this corporate, because the corporate sector comprises of around 65% of the total manufacturing GVA in India. So we have to necessarily follow the same data source, use the same data source as used in the annual national accounts. So we are using this corporate data, but these corporate data on a quarterly basis are basically, the information is available on basically the companies that are listed on the stock exchanges. That means the number is limited as compared to the total number that is available for the annual estimates. But nevertheless, these are major companies that are listed in the stock exchanges, And these companies actually they file only the average balance sheet. They don't compile, file the detailed balance sheet. When it comes to quarterly accounts, they only have the average version of the balance sheets, which gives the basic information. So, and therefore we compile an indicator based on staff costs, operating surplus, and the corporate profits and the depreciation. So this indicator is used to move the benchmark, the reference quarter estimate of the previous year. So basically what we are doing is that we are using this as an indicator only. We are not taking the entire level as such from this data. It is used as an indicator. So we have to follow this approach necessarily because to match up with the annual estimate which we would be using, where we would be using the corporate data in future. Insurance, the net premiums, yeah. So what we do is in the quarterly estimates we get the, it is basically for the quarterly estimate we have to use an indicator based approach. So we are using, for insurance we are using the net premiums claim because we do not have very detailed information. Even these insurance companies on quarterly basis, they do not provide much detail like claims and all. They don't give so much of information. So what information we have is the net insurance premium and gross claims. So using these indicators, we are moving the benchmark indicator on the quarterly basis. Then are the exports imports data reconciled? Yes. Actually we use the export import data released by the our central bank, that means Reserve Bank. So their data is based on the balance of payments. So it matches up with the data which they release. Now regarding the gross fixed capital formation by type of asset and by industry, that I think I already mentioned because basically we estimate the quarterly GFCF by two types of assets. That is the construction and machinery. The machinery asset is estimated on the basis of the index of industrial production of capital goods. The capital goods growth is used as an indicator for machinery. And of course, we take into account imports of capital goods and also. As far as construction, the GFCF is concerned, we use the same output that is which we have estimated in the production side to as a G for compiling the GFCF of the construction. Then inventory value revaluing adjustments, we do it only for the annual estimates, not for the quarterly estimates, but since we are removing the inventories, the change in stocks, we are using an indicator to extrapolate the previous year's change in stock. So to that extent, that inventory valuation adjustment is taken into account. So this is all I can say. If you want further details on the index of industrial production, I will tell my colleague, Mr. Rajesh Kumar Sharma to, yeah.
Thank you. And let me say that we are following the international standard and the methodology for the compilation of IIP, Index of Industrial Production. And this is based on the annual survey of industries. So annual survey of industries is the base, is the frame for the IIP. And we are following the fixed base approach. So either our item basket, the units, all are fixed based on the base year. The item basket and the units are all selected. What is in the base year, the 80% of the GVA. So top 80% of the GVA, the items and the concerned companies, they are selected and they form the item basket, and with that the weighing diagram is also drawn. So accordingly we are compiling on a monthly basis the IIP with a time lag of 42 days, and it is being disseminated at the website and all the concerned department within the government.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zuhari. Any question from the floor? Yes.
Okay, thank you for the time. I'm Nilton from Timor-Leste. This question will be regarded to Ms. Rajeswari. I just want to ask about, so you've mentioned in your slides that you have taken the weather data as an input to estimate the consumption of gas and electricity. So the question is there any empirical evidence that shows that the weather has an effect for consumption of these two commodities?
I said that we are not using. It is general. These are some indicators that are used by some countries. I have heard that some countries are considering to use this, but we are not using this data, weather data. In India, we are not using. We have an index of industrial production of electricity. So for the electricity sector, we have a clean index so that we are using. As far as this particular, this I made a reference when I was talking about the general, the internationally what indicators are used for compiling. So that is.
I have one more, but only suggestion, technical suggestion for the benchmarking between the quarterly and annual data. So to ensure the annual consistency, in the case of India, it's very good. You have 89% of indicators available for do the benchmark of your indicators. It's good to do the benchmarking. I just want to ask that, do you use some widely known methods that mostly using by most countries in the world? Because in case of Timor-Leste, we are using the Denton approach, one of the mathematical approach to benchmarking the quarterly and annual data. Because according to my perspective, that you have 89% of available indicators, so that you can use this approach to do the benchmarking. It's good to do the benchmarking process. So the challenge for you is that in choosing the indicator, you have to see the pattern of the data and also the relationship between the benchmark and indicators. Because in our case, by selecting this benchmark and indicator to see the movement, we look from the economics and theoretical relationship between the benchmark and indicator. So this is a suggestion. Maybe you can use and you can apply it in your country.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion, but we are aware of various techniques like benchmark, proportional dental method and all. We know it, but actually we found that because the method that we are using, because we have a system of revision policy of annual estimates. We have the advanced estimates release, we have the provisional estimates release, then we have the first revised estimates release. So we have, these 3 or 4 consequent releases. So along with that, we have an annual estimate. So we have to necessarily, do this along, because ideally what I found out was that when we use this proportional dental and all, we are independently estimating the quarterly estimates by using that benchmark indicator ratio, whatever. And then when you ultimately when you have all the 4 quarters, then you have to compile an annual. So then that way, but of course this method, the present method is perfectly working well with us, so that is what we didn't adopt all these methods. So probably we will try, we'll see that.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I have questions with Ms. Rajeshwari. You told that in the quarterly production of crop, production of crop is estimated based on harvesting. But crop do not follow the exact pattern of quarterly. So if there is no harvesting, how can you estimate the production of crop in that quarter?
Actually, we have, see, if a particular crop is harvested in a quarter, in any of the month of the quarter, it is noted on. And if it's not harvested, there will be it will not be shown in our quarterly estimate. Like there are certain crops which are not a part of, the production of which is not shown in the quarterly estimate. Because our Ministry of Agriculture does this quarterization of we don't do the quarterization of the production data of agriculture. Our Ministry of Agriculture, they do the quarterization because they have all the information that is related to the harvesting of crops. We don't do with some formula, no, we don't do it. Our National Accounts Division doesn't do the quarterization. It is done by our the Ministry of Agriculture, because they have a crop calendar. They have a month-wise crop calendar. Supposing a particular crop, say, is not harvested during a particular season or a quarter, it is 0 there. It is not shown there.
In Nepal, we compile the quarterly estimate based on the cost of production approach. Cost of production approach is used.
Thank you. One question for me. You have said that you use profits as one of the indicators for your to move, and profit before tax as an indicator may lead to the underestimate or overestimates of unrealized gains, which should not be taken into consideration in terms of output. A profit, you have a lot of things there. If you take the revenue also, there has a lot of things that is not related to the output itself. How you tackle this problem? Because there are a lot of things. You're talking about profit before tax. There's a lot of things. There are holding gains. There are unrealized investments. They are there. But how do you proportion it? Because you are when to talk about you want to have the production, you're looking at the output itself rather than all the unsubstantial things to be considered. Can you explain how you separate all those things before you take into consideration as an output for any sectors? Thank you.
Relating to this, you had a specific question on this profit before tax. Regarding this, you said that maybe unrealized gains or loss may be a part of it. Yes. Actually, ideally, these unrealized gains or loss should be a part of the balance sheet. Because but if there are any unrealized gains or loss, it could be on revaluation of some fixed assets, which these people, they could show in the profit and loss account. But actually, in the case of India, I found out that normally it is not shown, but wherever it is shown, they have some, safeguards against it, because as per the financial rules, I found out that as per the rules, there are certain guidelines for preparation of financial statements, in which this there is a revaluation reserve fund, wherever when fixed assets are revalued, so the depreciation can't be charged, and they can't be a part of the income, the profit and loss account. So, I mean, this is basically, in a way, because then it seems that there's this fund that is it's called the the revaluation reserve fund. So there is some adjustment which is done so that this such unrealized gains or profits are not part of the profit and loss account. It seems, at least in the case of India, I was told that there are certain safeguards like this. And in any case, we are using this profit before tax in the quarterly estimates.
Yeah, we understood that.
Yeah.
The answer is how you make sure that profit is an output. How to determine that profit before tax? That one of the things, profit before tax is not an output. Then the answer is that you're saying that there are one body that monitors that all those unrealized gains or holding gains are being taken out. But in terms of balance sheet, profit is profit.
No, let me tell you, we are not extrapolating the output. We are extrapolating the value added of the previous year by using an indicator which is a proxy for value added. That is, that indicator is based on the staff cost, the profits and depreciation, which is the factors of income in value added. It is not, we are not extrapolating the value of output using the profit. That is because what we are doing is that we are extrapolating the value added that was estimated in the previous year by using the same approach. That means a value added, you can have value added as output minus IC. You can have value added as compensation of employees plus operating surplus plus depreciation. The two, you get the same figure when you do the estimation. So we are estimating, so the previous year's figure of value added, we are extrapolating by using an indicator based on staff cost, profit before tax and depreciation. So that is what we are not extrapolating output. So this is a difference here. And in any case, I found out that many of these corporates, they can't, I mean, if you feel that any unrealized gain or loss would be a part of profits, it seems there are certain safeguards, and as per regulations that are existing, these companies can't, the depreciation of revalued assets can't be a part of the income and outlay account. because there is a revaluation reserve fund which they have to do the adjustment, they are not here. So that is what I was told.
Thank you. Okay. Herman, do you have any more? We move on to the second, right?
Yes, we can move on.
Yeah.
Now, the next item was the provincial and municipal regional GDPs. There are two issues related to imports, exports between the provinces and municipalities, and also similarly household consumption that you would buy goods and services in a different area where you are living. And how do you deal with that in the compilation of the regional DGPs? So you safeguard the growth rates with your automatic balancing process, but how would it not affect then some of the IO ratios and the implicit price deflators in doing that? In compiling the regional GDP, do you use a top-down or bottom-up approach? Then, I mean, you've talked about the reconciliation of the 11 time series, but how do you reconcile the GDP expenditure and GDP production in the end?
Thank you for the questions. For the first questions, in setting the net export among provinces and municipalities have considered many aspects. Some data related to export and import, such as survey of interregional commodity flow metrics and report on stevedoring activities. However, those data sources are not sufficient to cope the recommended the statistical compilation. So we are still trying to find a better way to improve our estimation of net export. And the second question about the household consumption expenditure. In compiling household consumption expenditure at municipal level, we mainly employ socio-economic survey, or in Bahasa Susnas. It covers all municipalities in Indonesia, and the survey records household consumption, either domestic product consumption or foreign product consumption. We measure household consumption expenditure based on what they consume. There is no distinction whether the products are purchased from domestic or abroad. And for the non-resident domestic purchase, we know that it's not part of household consumption expenditure. It is regarded as export of compiling municipality. So for the compiling municipality side, non-resident domestic purchase is not consumption household expenditure, but it is regarded as export. And the third question, based on our result, it is recommended that size of the statistical discrepancy prior to balancing process is already small enough. The larger statistical discrepancy would change other items more significantly in the process. So optimization of conventional reconciliation prior to automatic balancing would avoid unnecessary structural change in IO implicit price. And for the fourth question, we use a top-down approach for regional gross domestic product. So we compile national gross domestic product, and you know that in national and provincial level, we compile GDP annually and quarterly. Every quarter, we, together with provincial compiler, compile the GDP, the quarterly GDP, and we make reconciliation. So we, the national GDP will be the reference for the provincial GDP. After reconciliation between national and provincial GDP, because in municipal GDP, they only have to produce in annually GDP, so there are much time to conduct reconciliation between provincial and municipal GDP. So we use top-down. As you know that in government consumption expenditure, there are national budget that is allocated to provincial level, and there is a provincial budget that will be allocated to municipal. So it use top-down. And the last question, for the regional gross domestic product by expenditure, we have balancing item, as we said before, that we use net export of provinces or municipalities to make sure that the number of GDP by production and GDP by expenditure is same.
Thank you, Hadi. Any questions from the floor? I think Joseph, yeah? Please.
Hello, I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Smith from UNSC. Do you have any recommendations or contributions on how advancing the national accounts will contribute to the SDGs, since UNSC is represented in the interagency and expert group on SDGs, and the conference's theme is on SDGs? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a bit from the side. I mean, the national accounts and eventually the GDP, which is used as a summary indicator of the national accounts, is used in the SDGs as a benchmark. And several of the indicators are expressed as ratios of GDP. So if the national accounts is not, and your economic statistics system is not properly collected and disseminated and compiled, you will end up with SDG indicators that are improperly measured. So in that sense, the macro accounts, the national accounts, GDP in itself is a very important aspect for the SDGs.
Questions from the floor? Yes, Joseph.
Thank you, Chair. My first, it's not a question, it's a comment plus question, I guess, for starting with the Indonesian presenter. Automation. Okay, it assumes that you have very good benchmark information. And also it assumes that you collect benchmark information rather frequently. So that's because you need to, when you are automating something, you need to spec out every possible combination of identities and ensure that you do not distort the original structure or the representativity of the data. Mathematically, it is possible to balance in minutes, right? But is the resulting table or information or data representative enough to do good analysis? Now, it works reasonably well in advanced statistical systems with very good data sources and very small informal sector. I'm talking about very small, it's like 1% informal sector. I'm not sure in countries where, we are in a region where informal sector is probably larger than the formal sector. I'm talking in terms of the number of entities. Whether an automated approach would be applicable yet. So that's one comment. So the second comment also is about the city or municipal GDP. Once again, I would like you to sort of comment on why you need a municipal level GDP, because even countries like Canada don't produce municipal level GDP. They are only looking at it now. They are just experimenting it. They started producing state level GDP only because the government needed it for a fiscal program, and government poured a lot of money into the production of those data, those statistics, and so they're experimenting heavily still with the municipal level GDPs, right? But they are not confident yet of publishing it. So I'm just wondering how much research have you put into into this effort before you started publishing municipal level GDP? I will let you answer this first, then I'll ask others my question.
If you see our presentation before, the automatic balancing is finishing method. So this is only tools that help us to eliminate statistical discrepancy. For make sure the original series of data, you know that we conduct manual reconciliation before we conduct automatic balancing. So we in provincial level, there are meetings between provincial compiler with municipal compiler and reconcile together to make sure the numbers that are compiled is correctly. So there are discussion, there are make sure the concept, the coverage, and the data sources and the estimation method is same. So we maintain the quality for the series is by conventional reconciliation before we conduct automatic balancing. And for the second question, you know that Indonesia is decentralization government. So every municipal level has power to plan for their for region, for making a policy. It can be taken by municipal government. So the data, especially for GRDP in municipal level, is very important to help the stakeholder make the decision policy.
Okay, thank you. My last question for Hadi. You know that the private fund consumption, there's an element of inbound and outbound tourists. Then how do you manage to get that inbound and outbound consumption on the private fund consumption itself? Because I'm looking at your balancing item is the stock and the net exports. Okay, that is one thing, the balancing item. But on the private fund consumption, there's an element of inbound and outbound. How do you manage to measure of the consumption of tourists to that municipal and your own consumption in that municipal? Thank you.
First, I want to answer the outbound. I have explained before that we have socioeconomic survey that covers all municipalities. It records all consumption of the household. There is no distinction either the product is purchased from domestic or abroad. So I think it could be should be included in that survey for consumption in abroad area. For the inbound, you know that this is included in export, and as I mentioned before, in compiling municipal GRDP, we have limitation. So the net export as the weakest data, we put the statistical discrepancy in there. So inbound, it should be included in the net export.
Okay, thank you, Hadi. I think we should move on to the questions. I think I open the floor for any questions for the three presenters, and if any from the five presenters here. We are running short of time, so if you have any question to throw to them, kindly please do so now. Yes.
Thank you. I only have comments for Mr. Hari from Indonesia. You've written in your journal that you're using the R software to do the reconciliation. So is this procedure already in a package or still in a scripts that you've done by yourself? If you put in a package, I think it will better and it will benefit for most of the countries that want to do the job regarding the reconciliation. Thank you.
For the reconciliation PDRB application to reconcile provincial and municipal GRDP, actually we have made it user-friendly. There is GUI that we only click, by clicking the program, we can reconcile without knowing the complexity of formula in the script.
Okay, thank you. Herman, do you have any questions?
Yeah, let me go on to the next set of questions. The next set of questions deals with the capital stock measurements. I think it describes an impressive piece of work. I will ask only the last question, if you could, and I think in your paper you've indicated the number of assets, industry breakdown and so forth. So let's skip that one and answer for us the last question on how you obtained the assumptions related to the service life, retirement functions, age efficiency and age price profiles.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Herman. So for the last question, how we obtain the assumption for service life, retirement function, age efficiency profile, and age price profile. So for the service life, in 2007 and 2008, we conducted a special survey called Capital Expenditure Survey just to collect the information from the establishment for the purpose of the survey itself. If we want to know the structure of the asset by each industry, with that we also ask the service life of their assets as well. And then from the survey, for the 2 years survey, we managed to get the means service life for each asset in the industry, and then we compare the result that we received, we had from the survey with from the OECD manual that's stated all the others country service life, as well as we also compare it with our tax authority. We also ask, for example, in mineral exploration and valuation in Malaysia, quite big for petroleum, so we seek the advice from the expert itself, and then that's how we managed to get the service life estimation or assumption. And for the retirement function, we are following what's our technical advisor from ABS use, which is we are using the Winfrey S3 function for all of the assets except for entertainment assets. And for the age efficiency profile, we use the hyperbolic function. And for the age price, we are following the ABS basically as the same as the ABS use. So basically, the age efficiency we will have to have some assumption for the beta. So we are following the beta 0.5 for machinery and equipment, 0.75 for structure, livestock and capitalized plenty also 0.5, and which indicates the knowledge, we will set it to 0.9999. So for the age price profile, we will use the real discount rate for government 10 years government bond rate at for when we set up the capital stock compilation in Malaysia. We managed to get the information. It is about average between 5 to 6, maybe 4 to 6 for the 10 years. So the average is between 5%. So we use that rate 5 to generate our capital stock statistics.
Thank you for that. I would like to see next time that you use the capital stock data and tell us a bit about the productivity analysis that you carry out with this wealth of information that you have. I'm certainly, that's a nice topic for next year's Statistics Week.
And then I have a question for Noreen. Noreen, and there are difference between the published and the revised figure for insurance sector, and then impact the overall GDP, right? There you have when your published figure and your revised figure is quite big, and how did the communication process goes between to the public, to the users, because the revision is quite huge. Then the communication side of it, we need to address as a statistical body, and you make a big major revisions. How do you communicate that?
Yes, especially output and intermediate consumption items are very different, revised and old figures. But we are lucky, our value-added figures are very close. And the old annual data were produced for only quarterly GDP. And we use only its value-added and the growth rate, okay? And another point is its share financial activities, financial and insurance activities share in GDP in Turkey is around 3%. And also, insurance sector share in the financial activities is around 3%. And so its effects is very limited on the GDP, and it's not caused a problem for us.
And put up my slides for me again, please. Now, in terms of the insurance, you referred to implicit premium supplements, and I was wondering if why you used the term implicit as we refer to it in the SNA as expected premium supplements, which is not the actual property income on the technical reserve. Another question deals with your smoothing parameter for adjusting claims. Does that come from your own evidence to use that smoothing factor? And do you do also quarterly estimates for the insurance and pension fund? In terms of, it would be interesting to know why you've decided to use the expectations approach and not the more easier accounting approach for calculating the non-life insurance output. And if you do volume estimates, I think I need to stop there, otherwise we will not have time.
Implicit premium supplements are not equal the property income on technical reserves. Our expected premium supplements is derived detailed flows data and only included the investment income from the outstanding premiums and claims total. And second one is smoothing parameter. Yes, we have not long the time series for insurance sector, and we can't produce the smoothing parameter, and we use this parameter because the UN manuals UN manuals also refer to this smoothing parameter. And another question is yes, our annual and quarterly calculations are the same. Our data providers can be provide the same data detail on quarterly basis. And can you, next one? Okay. And expectations. We prefer the accounting approach because, as you know, Turkey is a candidate country for European Union, and in ESA, accounting approach is preferred. And how is volume measures insurance calculated?
I think we are going to have to a little bit of only 5 minutes left, I think. The last questions, I think, for Mr. Fahmi. Can you, from me, Mr. Fahmi, can you try two methods, okay, the labor input and the mixed income? Any distinct features that you see, which one is the best for the estimation of the agricultural informal sector in Malaysia?
Thank you, Mr. Fazrul. So, basically for the indirect method, the availability of data sources that will be used are more important. So, for the Malaysia, the labor input method is much suggested because the availability of the data sources. So for the year 2010, we have economic census and labor force survey, and then the next will be updated for the year 2015 when the economic census will be released. The data maybe for this year. And that's all.
Thank you, Fahmi. For the last time, any questions from the floor? Yes, Joseph.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually a question for the Malaysian delegation. Yeah. In one of your slides, way forward, you mentioned a survey for informal sector. You do have one of the more advanced statistical systems in the region, and I'm wondering if you have any project underway or an initiative underway to actually make informal formal. When I say informal formal, you bring that, essentially bring them into the tax system, right? Once you capture, once the tax system catches up with the informal sector, then they become formal in more than one way. So I'm just wondering if you have any project underway or initiative underway in Malaysia to do that.
That one, I think I'm going to answer that. Okay, on the formal, informal sector, we realize that there has been a very big contribution right now. Looking at the momentum of the online businesses and the professional working at home, there are a lot of it. We are looking at it. One of it is we have these questions on the economic census and the household on the e-commerce itself. The question for e-commerce is basically on the business, on the enterprise. Also, we have done last year for the second time on the household side, on the e-commerce on the household side. So we are looking at that, the possibility of how much actually the informal of the formal sectors. We are looking at that, and the results have been, I think it's still not been published yet. It's not been published. It's already into the consideration. I think soon it will be published. That's another thing. And also, one other thing is we like the informal. We are trying to legalize the informal in the formal sectors also. We are encouraging them to register under register of business rather than going without any registration. And the inland revenue are using techniques of the web scraping or all the big data now to stop all those Facebook, Instagram, online, for just to monitor the momentum of the informal of the formal sectors. We are about to conclude. We have 3 minutes more. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for all the speakers, and please give them a big hand for preparing this. And my special thanks to Mr. Herman Smith for helping me out on these questions and asking the questions. And for this paper, basically, this is where the national accountants do dwell with it a lot. And then the best available indicators that available for that country to make an estimates. What are the resources, as Ben Joseph, does it need to be done a survey? Does it pays back to do big surveys just to have a small estimates? And that what have in the system now, rather than looking and putting out new surveys whatsoever. And as I remember one national accountant said, national account is an art. Actually, it's an art, how to balance demand and supply. This is an art that is not purely A plus 1 plus 1 equals to 2, but the national accountants is 1 plus 1 might be 2, might be 1.9. That is the thing that I call it an art, rather than, and the factors that national accountants have now is the perception of you publish a GDP growth of 10%, does it being well received or not? The numbers can be always be, you can put up a very grossy numbers, the growth of the nation is 11%, but the perception, does your country have that momentum to go to that level? That there is always a question for the national accountants for each quarter, can I put this number? The growth is there, can you put up those numbers looking at your demand and supply? That's how I conclude this session for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fazrul, and thank you to all the presenters and our discussant for a very interesting session. Another topic I think we could have continued with for another couple of hours. Thank you, Fazrul, also for your very practical yet philosophical concluding remarks. We will be starting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock again. This is the end of our second day. We will again start with a little recap from our session organizers of today. So now you are also warned, Fazrul, of that. I wish you again a very pleasant evening. Thanks for all your contributions during today. I want to also mention that you may have some issues with traffic going back to your hotels, because we've been informed that there is a big procession going on. So I would advise that those of you who are staying at hotels in walking distance from here, walk back to your hotels. And for those of you who have a shuttle bus for a hotel, don't worry if that shuttle bus is a little late. Don't worry, this has just to do with the traffic issues. So good luck getting back to your hotels, and we'll all be seeing each other tomorrow at 9 o'clock.